Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Indigenous brothers and sisters, members of the panel. On this International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples, I want to begin by saying how honoured I feel as an Indigenous person, as a woman, and as a young person to have been invited to this forum that recognises the heterogeneity and traditional culture of the more than 370 million Indigenous peoples around the world. My origins are the source of my greatest pride. I belong to the comarca, the region of Ngäbe-Buglé, and I'm particularly proud of that. Last June, I represented Panama, and I was elected Miss Panama for Miss Universe. This is a title that I bear with the highest responsibility to show the world that I come from a multi-ethnic and multicultural country in which we have 7 Indigenous peoples in 5 regions, and without doubt that we contribute to the diversity and cultural wealth of Panama. Today, Miss Panama for Miss Universe 2018 is a symbol. It breaks down barriers and stereotypes. An Indigenous woman has shown that feminine beauty is all-inclusive and that origins are part of that. I am driven by the desire to show the world that Indigenous women are not weak. We are capable, talented women who are increasingly professional and resolved to fight so that we do not have to leave behind who we are and what we represent. To be included in a society which, while increasingly globalized, is also exclusionary. Indigenous peoples have the right to live with mutual respect, free from all forms of discrimination, with respect for our human rights. Our culture is so rich and diverse, our spiritual traditions are its history and philosophy. And this, for decades, has led us to speak as one, to defend our livelihoods and the value of our interculturality. The nagua that I'm wearing today is not only a costume, it's a symbol of my identity, of my Ngäbe people, that is exhibiting its craft. Beyond that, it is showing the legacy that is passed down generation after generation and is an expression of the traditional knowledge of the Ngäbe woman. Because that is what we are, Indigenous people. We transmit traditional knowledge to keep alive our social and cultural identity. And that is why young people are called to play a role in protecting and breathing new life into the identity of Indigenous peoples, both within and outside their territories. Madam Chair, 11 years after the adoption of the United Nations Declaration on the rights of Indigenous peoples, and from this same stage in which we saw one of the most important landmarks for our history, where we saw a light of hope for the respect of our dignity and our rights. We continue to await its implementation. We continue to await the achievement of significant goals to achieve our complete inclusion in society, to eradicate discrimination and prejudice, and to ensure that our voices can be heard in all areas of dialogue, and to ensure that all matters that affect us can be addressed. The topic that calls us here today on migration and mobility of Indigenous peoples is being discussed in a crucial year for migration. At the end of this year, we will be adopting the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration. This is an historic milestone on the global agenda. The phenomenon of migration affects all of us at all levels. Indigenous peoples migrate from the countryside to the city, driven by various social phenomena. Sometimes we are convinced that the opportunities, particularly for the young people, are in urban areas. Many other people move because we are forced to abandon our communities in which we see persistent social inequality and economic inequality. Moreover, the impact of climate change has affected us all. It drives us from our indigenous territories. Its effects, particularly in rural areas, such as indigenous lands, in which sustenance from and dependence on land and natural resources is a direct link. It is one of the greatest threats, therefore, to the survival of indigenous communities. Moreover, the ongoing struggle of numerous indigenous communities is intrinsically linked to the protection of their ecosystem. In their struggle against the poor practices of deforestation of forests, which change species and the traditional sources of water and food, among other grave consequences, which have a great impact on our great home, which is the earth. Therefore, we need governmental efforts to prepare indigenous communities in the face of disasters. We need to be able to generate medium to long-term strategies. We need sustainable development plans to bring down and reduce vulnerability. Moreover, we need to destine and ensure that we have financial resources and technological capacities to benefit indigenous communities. We mustn't forget the essence of our link with nature. But many indigenous communities have been forced to migrate to urban areas under the premise that they are safer, and to build on our resilience to become involved in the full belief of our origins, which leads us to move wherever we need to move. But this is the interculturality that we aspire for. Madam Chair, the 2030 Agenda is today a global goal which concerns us all. Beyond that, it is an opportunity for the poor and vulnerable. The guarantee of a more sustainable planet and of not leaving anyone behind will only be possible with the full involvement of indigenous peoples as dynamic stakeholders in development and in the necessary action plans. We need coordinated activities, and we need to see continued strengthening of traditional structures in order to achieve the 17 Sustainable Development Goals in accordance with the views of development of indigenous peoples. Madam Chair, I close by congratulating the representatives of indigenous peoples from around the world, and particularly those from Panama and those from my region, Ngäbe-Buglé. I urge us to recognise the great value of our contributions to society, to diversity, and to the wealth of civilizations and cultures. They are the shared heritage of our humanity. We have a shared goal, that is, to continue to make a great difference in our communities. Thank you very much.